Velkommen alle sammen. The Viking trial and justice system. An incredibly long subject that I'll have to make a whole series on, I think. But this scene here in The Last Kingdom that I saw, and I'm sure you guys have seen it in some other movies or read it in stories, the famous trial system where to prove your innocence, you reach into a boiling cauldron, pick up a hot rock, or in The Last Kingdom, it was Sigtrygg's brother, Rungvald, who picked up a hot sword, walked 9 steps with it. If they made it, and the wounds started to heal within 3 days, that meant the gods were behind them and the person was proven innocent in a court of law. And this history is used in a couple different TV shows and movies to slander our ancestors and make people think, oh my goodness, how barbaric our pagan ancestors were. Thank the Lord these Christians came in and took over and put our native religion into extinction and brought civilization to the heathens. As most of you know, if you watch my channel, that's all a load of shit. Sorry to burst some people's bubble, but pagans were much, much more civilized and fair and had a much better and honorable legal system than we are all led to believe in these modern TV shows and movies. In fact, many of the most cruel punishments actually and legal practices were brought in by the Catholic Church during the Viking Age and even before. So, the origin of this trial by hot iron or boiling water was actually used in Scandinavia, get this, to catch pagans, to prove that they were following their native religion. And this same practice was actually used for witchcraft trials later on in time too. So basically, if you see here, a man was accused of being pagan, he would be outlawed, which basically meant that you had no protection from the law and any citizen in the country could legally kill you without any repercussions. I actually like that one, and that's a very, very ancient punishment that dates back to pagan, when we were all pagan in Europe, but that's a subject for another video. But in Christian times, like you see here, this law was put into place that if a man was accused of being pagan and he wanted to prove that he was innocent and he was not pagan, he would get the hot iron treatment and would have to hold it in his hand. And if it was a woman, she would have to put her hands into the boiling kettles. In The Last Kingdom, they actually combined the two, where Rungvald picked up the hot iron from the boiling kettle. So there you have it. This text is preserved from the year 1260, long after official pagan times, but as you can see, there were plenty of pagans around, so much that they had to create laws like this to persecute them. But Norway at this point officially had Christian law, and it was Christian for more than 200 years officially by this time. Some parts of this law, though, seem to be a lot older than that. So this law code, we think, was started by Olav the Saint and brought into Norway at his time in the early 1000s. But yeah, this was not a practice that we ever had any evidence of being done in pagan times or before that. So that's just a big misconception that we need to put out there. And I usually like Last Kingdom because they're usually pretty historically accurate, but this one is definitely not one of those times. Really, the only other example of a trial like this taking place before this time is actually in Anglo-Saxon England in an anonymous legal text from the court of King Athelstan, where a criminal there would put their hand into boiling water to pick up a stone, and the depth of the stone which had to be retrieved was up to the wrist for 1 ordeal and up to the elbow for a 3-fold ordeal. So that was for more serious offenses like treachery or treason, something like that. And this ordeal, this trial system would take place in a church with several in attendance, purifying themselves and praying to God to reveal the truth. And then 3 days later, they would be examined to see if the wound was healing or not. And if it was healing, they would be innocent. So again, a Christian thing there. We also have this from an even older source, a Frankish source, where 2 saints were using this to basically solve a dispute amongst themselves. So again, a Christian thing. I will say though, what it does seem like from a lot of these trials and, you know, judicial methods from the Middle Ages and before, a lot of the most cruel and unjust things that the Catholic Church brought into Europe, it tends to pop up in a country only in the first couple hundred years after they had converted to Christianity. But eventually they decide that they can't do this anymore. This is wrong. This is pretty brutal. We see the same thing in Scandinavia. In the year 1245, Scandinavia was visited by Cardinal William of Sabina and his basically group of diplomats. And when they came into Scandinavia, they basically convinced the rulers of Scandinavia to abolish this judicial torture system and all kinds of judicial torture, and they all seemed like pretty good men, good Christian men there, so can't be mad at that. But very importantly here, what we can learn from, all over the world, this types of thing happens when people are converted into a new belief system in history. At the start, it's very, very cruel and aggressive and unjust punishments to basically discipline or get rid of anyone who doesn't follow the approved doctrine. This happens until the entire belief system is wiped out almost. Only at that time, sometimes later, sometimes it takes 50 years, sometimes a couple hundred years, but eventually the overlords decide to be a little bit kinder and more compassionate to us after they have tortured us for a couple hundred years, and their agenda is widely accepted, and the old beliefs are damn near extinct. Man, if you guys don't see the parallels to today, I don't know what to tell you. We are well on our way to this happening again, and I think humans already and today are doing some very, very cruel and unkind things to each other just because the other person doesn't agree with them or has some different beliefs. I see so many people doing really evil and unjust things that they know are wrong, but just because the higher power says it's okay. 1,000 years ago, that higher power was the church using Christianity for a bad purpose to do bad things. Today, most Christians are good people, and there are other higher powers that people put the same blind faith in, though, without questioning what is really right and wrong. It's around you everywhere you look, in your courthouse, in your supermarket, in your city hall, in your workplace, in your schools. It's everywhere this is happening. People just following the orders, the laws that the overlords decided was right. Your boss or your supervisor or commander or your teacher or the government or your parents or whatever, just because they say things are allowed, what is right and wrong, doesn't make them ethically right and wrong. Me, I for one actually trust that humans are good in nature, and we have a brain for a reason to use this basic logic to decide ethics and what is really right and wrong, and 99% of the time people will actually do the right thing if they free their mind from outside influence from above. It's the absolute simplest thought process in the world that literally anyone above a 70-something IQ can figure out. Just the thought of saying, I probably shouldn't do this mean thing to that person because I wouldn't want that done to me. And isn't that what Jesus taught people to do all along? These are so simple words, but so beautiful. Unfortunately, most rulers in the Middle Ages didn't pay any attention to what Jesus said and just did some evil things in the name of Christianity, but I hope we can make a U-turn today and avoid another dark age that's coming that's going to last hundreds of years. But hope you enjoyed the history lesson at least, and maybe took some knowledge from the rant. But yeah, I'm going to make some more videos coming soon about Last Kingdom and Vikings. The accurate things, the inaccurate things, what I liked about it, because there's a lot of good things, especially with The Last Kingdom, but there's a lot of bad things too with all these series. So stay tuned, and will be more videos on these types of things to come.